some haven't. What is...
Shame on them.
Yeah. What is the Irresistible Revolution?
Well, I think that it was Emma Goldman that said, if I can't dance, then it's not my revolution. And I think when I look at Jesus, what I see almost every time he opens his mouth is he talks about the kingdom of God, which was the same word as empire. So he's talking about like God's dominion, you know, and as he describes it, it's so beautiful, but it looks like almost the upside down kind of antithesis of the world that we live in, where the last are first, the first are last, the mighty are cast from their thrones, the lowly are lifted. So to me, that's what Jesus proclaimed, but it's also what he embodied. It's not just about being against something, because I think there's a lot of things wrong in the world, and it's easy to see those things, but it's also about being for something, and for a world where there's enough for everybody to have this day their daily bread, and to see people beat their swords into plowshares and turn the things that have brought death into things that bring life. So to me, that's what the revolution of God is about. I once heard it said that the gospel comforts the disturbed and disturbs the comfortable. The gospel means good news. So contrary to what you might hear from some televangelists and preachers, I think the gospel really is good news. But it doesn't necessarily always look like that. For the mighty to be cast from their thrones, or for the rich to be sent away empty. But the fact is that there is a more liberating and beautiful way to live than 1% of the world having 40% of the world's stuff, while 25,000 people starve to death every day. So I think that good news is good news for everybody, because the wealthy 1% of the world or whatever has also been suffering from the patterns where we're living in the patterns where the average North American consumes the same amount as 500 folks in Africa. And you start to go, what does it look like to love my neighbor as myself? And you go, maybe God's dream looks a little bit different from Wall Street's dream. The life of a Christian isn't just about having a ticket into heaven and escaping this world, but it's about having a reason to engage this world and the brokenness, the suffering, and the pain that so many of our brothers and sisters endure. So Karl Barth said we got to read the Bible in one hand, but we got to read the newspaper in the other. And I think that's what a lot of young people are doing, is they're saying, I want to live for the kingdom of God. I want to do something meaningful in this world, and it's beautiful. Missions is something that we do every single day with our lives. And so the real question is not just, am I going to be a doctor or a teacher, but what kind of doctor or teacher am I going to be, and how do I use the gifts that I have to do something meaningful for God in the world? So Frederick Buechner, he put it right when he said, we've got to take our deepest passions and connect them to the world's deepest pain. And I think that's exactly where the Christian vocation and calling, the missional life is when we take our gifts and we connect them to the world's pain, and we spend our lives on behalf of others.
You once said that it's more dangerous to stay at home in our suburbs than to go to a war zone. Can you explain that?
Jesus said really clearly that we are not to fear that which can do damage to our bodies, but to fear that which can do damage to our souls. So when I look at the things that can do damage to our body, those are, knives and guns and bombs or whatever, but like the things that do damage to our soul, I think are the subtle demons, the spiritual forces that cause us to move away from suffering and to insulate ourselves. Right. Sodom and Gomorrah, you read Ezekiel though, and God says really clearly, this was the sin of your sister Sodom. She was arrogant, overfed, and unconcerned. She didn't care for the poor. And you think that if that's what evil is, then we've got to really rethink the way that we live in the world so that we can embody God's goodness. Hey, I'm Shane Claiborne, and you are watching Converge TV.